Hey, everybody, it's me, the anthropomorphic tiger, serial mascot, now VTuber, Tony the Tiger.
What's up?
Hey,
Tony, how you doing?
How you doing, man?
I don't mean to brag, but I'm kind of proud of my setup.
It looks incredible, Tony. It's amazing. What sort of setup is that? Is it water cooled?
Well, not exactly.
Are you using some sort of like a white cryofuel coolant in there?
This is my brand new state-of-the-art milk-cooled PC, custom built for all my Tony games.
Excuse me? What did you say, Tony?
Milk-cooled PC.
Oh, no. No! We've been through this before! You do not cool gaming systems with food! How many times do I have to tell? I'm done. I can't. I can't.
Stop getting all pepper hands, Mad Pat. Welcome to the club, Tiger Bro.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show that's great! Last month, as part of a recent marketing campaign to get hip with the youngs, Kellogg's was looking to turn megabits into megabytes by giving one of their all-time favorite cereal mascots the VTuber treatment. That's right, Tony the Tiger from the front of Frosted Flakes boxes traded in his iconic cat ears for a pair of cat ear headphones. And I gotta say, it's not a bad look. You might even call it great! And yes, I recognize that that's now the second time in 30 seconds that I've used that joke, but if you think I'm overusing it, well, clearly you did not watch this stream.
The inaugural great cereal bowl. Great, friends. Great. Just remember, you're great. Well, that was fun, wasn't it?
As part of his big VTuber debut, Tony hosted the Great Cereal Bowl of Greatness, where streamers Chrissy Official, Gold Glove, Big Cheese, and surprise guest Cleo Thomas went head-to-head competing in Fall Guys to earn their stripes, as well as
a very real, very tangible trophy.
Let me just say, when you have to specifically call out the real tangibility of your trophy, I kinda start to doubt that it's actually there. Anyway, missing trophy aside, the stream went largely how you'd expect a branded stream to go. Everyone was very upbeat and positive. Chat was polled about their favorite era of Tony the Tiger. There was cereal tasting. And of course, the essential to every stream, the part where the animated VTuber cereal mascot dropped some very deep value judgments about the state of the world.
Only a few things are high quality enough to earn a great, like Frosted Flakes. If everything was great, then nothing would be great.
Tony lowers his standards for no one. Also, gotta admit, my favorite bit had to be near the end where Chrissy, just to fill an awkward silence, asks Tony what type of a gamer he is, and it completely crashes his system.
So with the pause, does that make you mouse and keyboard or a controller gamer?
He's left speechless.
You lost him.
You can just see the marketing team behind the computer scrambling to figure out what the brand-safe cool kid answer to this is. Obviously, guys, it's PC Master Race, and by PC I mean politically correct. Now, for as much as I'm memeing on it, it was cool. Anytime a brand is willing to go out of their comfort zone and try something new, you gotta give it some level of respect, right? And for me, the real highlight of this thing came from the very beginning in that clip that I showed you during the cold open. Tony shows off his gaming rig, and it's a high-powered, milk-cooled computer.
This is my brand new state-of-the-art milk-cooled PC, custom built for all my Tony games.
So of course I hear that, and immediately my food theory brain turns on and starts asking whether cooling your computer with milk is possible. And it seems like Kellogg's knew that people like me would be tempted, because that moment was immediately followed by a nifty little legal warning from Linda.
Linda from legal would be mad if I didn't mention that you probably shouldn't put milk in your liquid-cooled PC. That is for tigers only.
Milk-cooled PCs are only for tigers, huh, Tony? But I want to be a tiger. I want to be great, too! So today we're looking at the plausibility of a milk-cooled gaming rig. Seems like a terrible idea, but just how bad are we talking here? We've been down this road before, and I've been shocked by the results. Over on Game Theory, we looked into the possibility of a KFC fried chicken-cooled gaming console, and we found that it would work better than expected, so hey, who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised by milk. So today we're throwing Linda's legal advice advice out the window. Milk may do a body good, but can it do a GPU good? Could milk, the literal poster child for needed refrigeration, actually be used to cool your computer? Or will our computers be left saying,
It's so damn hot, milk was a bad choice.
Now, before the theory can start heating up, we first need to discuss why computers need to be cooled down in the first place. Computers use electricity, obviously, and they work by changing the state of teeny tiny transistors that exist in the processor. To change the state of those transistors, the voltage either needs to be increased or decreased. All circuits have some amount of electrical resistance, so when electricity flows through the gates in a computer, it's gonna generate some small amount of heat loss. But because we're talking about billions of small transistors all crammed into there, all operating at the same time, small losses of heat are gonna collectively build into a hot computer. And when you're talking about high-powered PCs playing graphically intense games, well, the number and speed of the calculations that the computer is gonna have to run are astronomical. Just as an example, the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3990X, one of the highest-end microprocessors from a few years ago, was reportedly able to run over 2 million instructions per second. Now, admittedly, all of this is a large simplification to how it all works, but basically it all boils down to lots of computing power requires lots of electrical transistors. The more you have and the harder you work them, the more heat you're gonna get. So, for the computer to function properly, that heat needs to be dispersed out into the surrounding environment. The most common way of doing that sort of thing? Fans. Simple. Blow cool air over the hot area so it dissipates. But once you start talking about stronger computers that generate more heat, fans may no longer be the most efficient solution. That's why manufacturers created a process called liquid cooling, where heat from a computer is absorbed by what's known as a water block. A water block is a piece of metal like copper or aluminum that's good at absorbing heat. The bottom of the water block sits directly on top of a chip that's being cooled, which allows the heat to transfer up into it. Thermal paste between the chip and the block also helps to improve the heat transfer. The block is then filled with hollow tubes and channels that liquid coolant runs through. Most often, the coolant is water, but in our case, it's gonna be milk. Whatever liquid you're talking about, it's gonna absorb the heat, and then it's gonna go through a series of tubes to a radiator where a fan's gonna then cool the whole thing off. Seriously feels like we're inching closer and closer to computer brands just cooling PCs by dumping them in buckets of liquid. Oh wait, Microsoft is already doing that. I see these pictures and I definitely understand the concept, but it also makes every bone in my body scream no. Also, and I need to mention this because people tend to have very strong opinions about computer stuff, I'm not saying liquid cooling necessarily works better or worse for any given system. My friend Linus over at Linus Tech Tips has done some very in-depth episodes looking at the comparative effectiveness of various cooling methods for high-powered desktop setups, only to find that they seem to overhype and under-deliver. So I recommend that you watch those videos if you're curious about whether or not to shoot ice water through your expensive electronic. Me? I'm just the food channel guy who sits here and says, milk and computer go brrrr. So with all of that out of the way, how does milk possibly fare as a coolant? According to computer brand Corsair, a good coolant needs to meet these 3 requirements. It needs to efficiently transport heat from water blocks to the radiators, it shouldn't chemically react with other components in the loop, and of course, it should match the aesthetic of your finished system. So let's look at the requirements one at a time. The last one, easy 10 out of 10 for Tony. He might be rocking that neon streamer vibe, but he's always been a cereal boy at heart. On to criteria 2, milk's ability to transport heat. When talking about liquid cooling, the number we're looking for is a substance's thermal conductivity, which basically means its ability to transfer or conduct heat. Water actually has an excellent thermal conductivity for exactly this purpose, 0.598 watts per meter Kelvin. That's the number of watts conducted per meter thickness of the material per degree of temperature difference between one side and the other, hence that really wacky unit of measure there. Anyway, what that number basically amounts to is that water is able to absorb a lot of heat before its temperature changes, which is exactly what you want for a coolant. That's often why water is used as the main point of comparison among PC coolants. And as we learned about in our KFC episode, fried chicken would actually be a decent coolant as well, since the high water content of the meat would be able to take in a lot of heat, amounting to about 88% the effectiveness of water. So where does that leave milk? According to the Journal of Dairy Science, the thermal conductivity of whole milk ranges from 0.53 to 0.613, and skim milk may be slightly better, ranging from 0.527 to 0.622 watts per meter Kelvin. In other words, their testing found that milk was right at the level of water, or perhaps even better. I was a bit skeptical, so I kept looking for scientific papers only to find the same results again. Research from the Federal University of Lavros found basically the same thing. Over and over, the papers I read kept saying that milk was right at the conductivity of water, if not better, which both is and isn't surprising when you actually stop to think about the science of this whole thing. It's weird to think of milk being being pumped through a computer system and working effectively as a coolant, but then again, milk is basically 88% water anyway, so the results largely track. In fact, we have actual real-world examples of this exact scenario coming from fellow YouTuber J2Cents. Back in 2016, he was out here being daring with some dairy. While the rest of the world focused on coating our bodies with 100 layers of anything we could get our hands on, Jay was out here pumping alternate liquids like Powerade, orange juice, and skim milk through his high-powered computer system just for the lulz. And he found that our research here was right. Skim milk actually performed right on par with normal PC coolants.
All right, well, the test has been going for just under 11 minutes now, and I want to point out the temperatures are actually more level and stable with the milk than they were with the Gatorade. I thought that the Powerade was going to do the best, but the milk actually cooled the best.
So now we know that milk can cool for short periods, but how long can it really last? Jay's test lasted just a few minutes, but we're talking about running milk through a super hot computer for hours. That stuff is going to get hot enough to curdle and clog the tubes, right? At least that was my initial thought, but it turns out no. Milk actually manages to pass this test too. When milk curdles, it goes through a process known as coagulation. Basically, the proteins transform from a liquid to a solid. This usually happens when the milk's acidic content increases, like when it spoils, or during the process of cheese making. But it can also be caused by an increase in temperature. Studies have shown that changes to the proteins of milk aren't prevalent until temperatures exceed 65 degrees Celsius, or for all of us here in the States, that's 149 degrees Fahrenheit. So what temperature is the water in a liquid-cooled computer getting up to? Not nearly that high, it turns out. Most users of high-end gaming PCs report coolant temps of around 30 to 50 degrees Celsius, or 86 to 122 Fahrenheit. Heck, even most D5 or DCC pumps have a max operating temperature of 60 degrees Celsius, or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't even need to know what either of those things are to know that those are numbers keeping Tony's PC clean of curds. Honestly, the worry here isn't milk solids, it's actually the smell. It takes about 55 hours for the smell of milk to turn sour. Not necessarily spoil, just turn sour. And considering the average playthrough of Elden Ring clocks in at just over 100 hours, let's just say that the consecrated snowfield is gonna stink hard, and not just for the usual reasons. So it looks good and it's able to withstand the heat. Sure, the smell might get bad in a few days, but still, as long as we flush the system regularly, we should be cool to brag about our milk-cooled PC, right? Rub that one in Linda from Legal's face. Except, we still haven't touched on point number 3 here, chemical reactions. The coolant you choose shouldn't chemically react with other components in the loop, and that obviously makes sense. The fluid you choose to cool your PC kinda is gonna fail at its job if it's also ruining your PC in the process. And this, my friends, is the major problem with milk. You see, around the 1930s, Big Dairy had itself a problem. All of its metallic equipment was having unusually short lifespans due to corrosion. And when they went to investigate the cause, turns out it was the milk. Copper and nickel, both metals that are commonly found in their equipment, were feeling the corrosive effects of the milk hard. In fact, they could see the impact of the milk starting to eat away at the metal in as little as 1 hour. And wouldn't you know, copper and nickel are two metals that are very important to PC cooling systems. So instead of having 55 hours before the milk smells bad, you now have 1 before it trashes your computer. And by letting it sit in there, over time that corrosion is not only going to affect performance, but in the case of milk, it's also going to serve as an excellent breeding ground for bacteria. Bacteria like biofilms, layers of bacteria that not only attach to the surface of an object, but also to the bacteria around them. One example of biofilms that I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with is dental plaque. Not really the sort of stuff that you want floating around your PC. I mean, I've seen a lot of repair shops calling themselves computer doctors, but not a whole lot of computer dentists around. Unfortunately for Tony, biofilms aren't just slimy situations, but also sticky ones. Thanks to their special shell, the bacteria inside biofilms are almost impossible to chemically eliminate, making them notoriously hard to get rid of. If not properly eliminated, the biofilm will start to affect the system's heat transfer capabilities and even grow large enough to block flow of the tubing. And this isn't a hypothetical situation either. This is the sort of thing that real-world water treatment facilities are constantly having to deal with. This wouldn't just send Tony's computer temps skyrocketing, it would also send his VTuber career crashing down. So how long before Tony's VTuber career ages like, well, milk? When it comes to biofilms, they've been known to form in milk in as little as 8 hours. Thanks to the press release published by Yahoo, we know that Tony's PC was filled 3 days prior. So wouldn't Tony's PC have already been experiencing issues? Well, what if I told you that it was, and we can see it on stream? Don't you think it was a little weird that for the whole hour-and-a-half stream dedicated to Tony's foray into the world of VTubing, he was only present for 45 minutes? What about how the whole time it felt like Tony and the streamers were making excuses for why Tony couldn't play games, even though the press release outright said that Tony was going head-to-head against the streamers? He even brought in a last-minute minute sub with his guest Cleo Thomas.
Because this is my tournament, it wouldn't be fair if I was to compete against you, so I figured Cleo could come in and step in for me here.
Folks, I'm not buying this one. Remember that moment Tony glitched out over the question of being a console or PC guy? What if that wasn't him desperately searching for a brand-approved answer? What if instead it was his milk-cooled computer failing him? After all, earlier in the stream we hear this about the computer.
I've got 128 gigabytes of RAM. The graphics card is strong enough to render me in 3D.
His computer is how he's able to render himself in real time in 3D during the stream, meaning that glitch was ultimately a computer failure as his system chugged along, blowing its way through the massive milk corrosion that was happening within the system. In the end, it looks like Linda from Legal was right. Don't drink your coolant and get the milk out of your computer. Keep it in the bowl just like Tony intended. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm in the mood for some tricks. Sorry Tony, Frosted Flakes just get too soggy too quickly, and that's anything but great. But hey, you know what else is great? Our sponsor for today's episode, Native. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I used the same deodorant for 30 years of my life. It was just what my parents gave me when I was a kid, and I never really thought to question my deodorant preference. TLDR here, I needed to change it up, and after testing a lot of brands, I landed on Native, the aluminum-free deodorant brand with ingredients that you can understand, like coconut oil, shea butter, baking soda. They even list on the label what each ingredient is doing to the product, which is just really cool. But even more importantly, Native gets the job done with amazingly long-lasting odor protection. My old stuff barely lasted through the day, but Native goes on clean. It dries quickly, and then it keeps me smelling fresh for days on end. No more do my armpits smell like day-old milk running through an animated tiger's PC. And let me just say, their deodorants smell great! Usually you're left having to choose between synthetic or overly perfumed smells, but with Native, everything is light and fresh. My personal recommendations are the coconut vanilla scent as well as the eucalyptus mint. Best of all, they also have an amazing spread of body washes that get you clean and smelling great. Normally 3 deodorants would cost you $39, but if you use my link and the code FOODTheorists, FOODTHEORISTS, you'll get them for over 33% off. That's just $26. Plus, with my code, you can also get 20% off any body wash or toothpaste. So if you're looking to treat your body well or just change up your personal hygiene, I highly recommend you consider Native. Link is in the description, and make sure you use the code FOODTheorists at checkout for a discount. Now, I gotta go. It's enough talk about my armpits. I'll see you all next week.